what they just announced would happen. But before I talk about the details, let me, on behalf of the People's Progressive Party, wish all Guyanese a blessed Good Friday and happy Easter holiday, particularly our Christian brothers and sisters. Over the past week, we have had several public engagements at the political level and also the level of the government. And I want to address some of those issues. But before I do so, let me return to the press conference that the People's National Congress had sometime last week, I think it was. So I read the transcript, and the two most important things that came out from the press conference was the dodging of the question as to whether they owe the city council or not. So that dominated the question and answer session. And they first of all argued that the People's Progressive Party is starving the city of money. That's the standard argument that they make every time they speak about the bad stewardship of the city council and of Georgetown. And then the second issue, of course, that can't be substantiated. The level of investment made in the city by this government is unprecedented in every single area. We had to take over almost all of the responsibilities of the city council, from drainage and irrigation to the fixing of roads in the city, to all 34 playgrounds in the city, from Agricola all the way to Commons Lodge, fixing them, putting in lights now in all of them, etc. Even the beautification programs in the city, and also we have assisted enormously with garbage collection too, by building a dump site outside of the city and assisting them with the collection of garbage. So the entire revenue of the city is used back on themselves, not on service to the people in service to the people of Georgetown. And that's evident to everyone who had a closer look at their stewardship in the city hall. They're unaccountable at City Hall. For years, their accounts have not been audited. They have these schemes that characterize their presence in City Hall, schemes designed to collect money on the side in exchange for waiving taxes and interest on taxes. They're attempting now to pursue one of those schemes, and the minister has had to put a hold on it because it would have resulted in hardships to the people of Georgetown and people having to pay bribe to individuals in the city council. We thought it's a way for the PNC to raise money for the elections by extorting people. That scheme was recently put on hold. So in a nutshell, if you examine their argument that we have starved the city of funds and that Georgetown is not experiencing development, you would see it's false. And then if you examine even closer their management of City Hall, you would see it characterized by corruption and incompetence, and not in service of the people of Georgetown. So That's a fact. The next point is their own record, that is the PNC's record with City Hall. There are several properties owned by the city. They have given the PNC those properties at rentals that like 100,000 Guyana dollars per year. That's the level of rentals. They have several properties owned by the town, but being given over to the PNC or rented to the PNC. That's one. Two, we know now, every single person knows that MICWAC, which is a private company incorporated under the Companies Act, is the holding company for PNC properties. They've accumulated over $6 billion of debt to City Hall. Considering the budget of City Hall, which is about $3 billion per year, that's about 2 years of expenditure in the city. This one company that is the holding company for PNC properties, they never paid any taxes historically, and so that's why the sums accumulated to such a vast amount. And they keep creating a smokescreen around what is so clear to everyone else. So the reporters pressed those who attended the press conference, and they kept saying, oh, we don't know about this company, but we'll pay all of our taxes. The reporter said, but this company is the holding company for the PNC. They didn't even deny that, which is clear by law. You could easily verify it. A child could verify it, but they're still denying it. Imagine in April of 2025, they're denying the ownership of this property and their tax obligations. And they had a demand notice sent to that company already from the City Hall, but they would never pursue the collection of the taxes. So they just say that's what they did. Ignore, lied about their obligations to the city. PNC is really good at doing that, and with a straight face. Then they spoke about the need for a modern taxation system in the town. I think it was Solomon who mentioned this. Modern taxation system is the synonym for increased taxes on the residents of Georgetown and possibly Linden. And the PNC has a track record of doing this in the areas that they control. Historically, we have been opposed to increasing taxes. The PNC controlled New Amsterdam. Under their tenure, the taxes in New Amsterdam, rates and taxes, increased by 100%, which didn't happen in any other area in the country. So it's not unprecedented for them to do this in communities that they control, where they control the local government body. And so they are advocating at the last week's press conference for higher taxes on the residents of Georgetown and Linden. So that is what came out of APNU's, or the PNC's press conference. Nothing else of worth, not a single thing, if you examine what they spoke of. And nothing about helping people, programs for the future, their plans, if they have any, which we don't think they have. Nothing of that sort. It's just some inane criticism of the PPP and dodging questions about their tax obligations to the city and their bad stewardship, not of the country now, but of Georgetown that they have always controlled the city here, that they've always run. The AFC just had their press conference concluded, and I saw they indicated that they have been unable to reach agreement with the PNC to have a consensus candidate to contest at the elections. Now, you know our position. I stated it at Babujan. We don't care who they put there. It doesn't bother us too much. Not because we're arrogant, but because people will know that it's contrived. You run regardless of the form you put together or the candidate who leads your campaign. You have to contend with two things when you face the electorate. One, your track record, and two, your plans for the future. And they have a dismal track record. They have had 28 years of failure, stealing elections. When they ended their tenure after 28 years, the country was as poor as Haiti. And in the 5 years that they took office again, well, I spoke of the 3 years when they controlled Parliament from 2011 to 2015, 2012 to 2015. They also were cutting things. They supported nothing. They killed the Amila Falls. They cut the budget by 90 billion that were bringing benefits to people. Bad track record there again when they controlled the parliamentary majority but did not have control of the executive. From 2015 to 2020, they had control over the parliament and the executive. We lost tons of jobs. They took away people's welfare, the children, elderly, etc. The economy, every sector started decline. It was a period characterized by higher taxes and low enthusiasm, very little investment in any sector outside of the oil and gas sector. And then they attempted to steal elections again. So that's what you have to take to the electorate. It's not who looks nice. It's not finding somebody, who may be attractive to the electorate on their own. It's your track record in government that you have to face the electorate on. And then what are you going to offer the electorate? So far, it's just, if the PPP says 100,000 cash grant, they say 500,000. If we say we want to increase pension by old age pension by a particular sum, they increase it threefold. Nothing that is well thought out. No short, medium, long-term plan. In fact, no plan for the future. I dealt with this recently, that it's all about distribution of money, nothing about creation of wealth for people. Nothing about how we create a better or satisfy the needs of our people for housing. In fact, they want to support rentals to pay people, help them to pay their rent by using oil money to do that, not ownership. So you have no plan for the future. AFC's even, well, you remember Nigel Yu saying, let's all get together and come up with a plan. We don't need to get together, not because we don't want to include people, but we already have mapped out our plans historically through several documents, the National Development Strategy, the Low Carbon Development Strategy, the Competitiveness Strategy, the Poverty Reduction Strategy. All of these create the macro vision, and they underpin the programs, policies, and projects of our government. They all aim towards a particular objective for all of our people. So that's what you would have to contend with. You don't have any plan. On anything you put together, nobody would believe you. Because what can you put together in your manifesto now that would make people believe you when you had all of these, you made so many promises in 2015 to the youth and everyone else, and you failed to implement them. So you have not only a competence gap here, because you can't put together a proper plan, but you also have a credibility gap. Because even if you make a promise, then nobody believes you will implement it, given your own track record. So they are, regardless of who they put at the top of the ticket, they have several issues to face with, as I said, contend with. No track record, a credibility gap, a competence gap, and then, of course, a divisive policy of racism. Not bringing our people together, but trying every single day seeking to pull them apart based on race. So that is why we're saying they're in a really bad place, no matter which candidate they put together. And the fact that they could not come up with a consensus candidate is largely because they don't look at what they want to do for the country. I dealt with this in an earlier press conference. They don't think about, let's come together and create a program of what we want to do for the people of this country. Their only order of business in the coalition talk was about who gets what if they win the government. How many seats one party will get in the parliament, how many government jobs they would get, how many ministerial jobs they would get, which portfolio they will get. It's all about sharing spoils. They see government as an opportunity to share spoils. And that is why it was bound to fail, because if you're talking about sharing spoils, then you're looking at your own selfish, corrupt interests in the future. Not about what's good for the country and getting the best person to do the job, or meritocracy. They are all about, what do we get out of this? And that was the entire philosophy for their talks. We want 60%, then they drop it to 45%, now 30%, but we must get these portfolios, these ministerial jobs in the AFC. So this is why they're at this stage. The talks, they said, have collapsed. They're going to go on their own, but they're not ruling out a coalition before nomination day. So they will continue, because when the AFC goes on the ground and they realize that nobody is listening to them, they would probably try to crawl back within the APNU fold. They would just do that. There's a party that is particularly spineless and also extremely corrupt. And I can give you specific instances of the acts of corruption, not speak about it in a general way. Cathy Hughes giving herself contracts in her own ministry to her own company, and then Nigel Hughes saying he didn't see anything wrong with that when asked about it, and he's leader of that party. Patterson is charged for several matters now before the court. And also the Durban Power project that he oversaw, 600 million is missing based on the Auditor General from the report. Almost every ministry. Trotman was in charge of the oil and gas sector. This bad agreement with ExxonMobil, and you saw the Clyde and Company report that they themselves commissioned, how he rushed it through, was done by Trotman. And Nigel Hughes was linked to the company. So I don't need to say to the public and enumerate more instances. I can enumerate a long list of specific cases of corrupt activities by the AFC. So that's why they failed. So that was the only thing that really came out of their press conference, the announcement. The rest is all talk. Patterson talking about oil, the gas to energy project, the usual lies and stuff. I'm not going to respond to that. They have no plan except to criticize what the PVP does. So we're aware that already the PNC are printing materials for their presidential candidate long before, and that process started some while, like the T-shirts and stuff they're putting there already. So the talks, even while the talks are going on, they're putting some nice faces on who are the presidential candidate on the T-shirt. So I think it's all ill-fated. And the AFC is so unprincipled, they're gonna try to hobble together all of the flotsams and jetsams in our society into a coalition. They're gonna do that. Every other group, from criminal types to people who have no public support whatsoever. They're one-person party, just to create the facade that they have a coalition to. The AFC would do that, and APNU to some extent. I saw Patterson said they're going alone, but they're sure about one thing: the PVP will lose the elections. Well, good luck in the elections. Over the weekend, we had several engagements in Essequibo and Berbice. The president was in Berbice and had some robust engagements with various communities across Berbice, at which people got to listen about our plans for currently being implemented and how impactful they are on people, and also about future plans in the next government. And a lot of people, as with our engagements, a lot of people had the opportunity to raise issues, to make comments, and also to identify their dissatisfaction with services being provided at various levels of the government. But if you look at the public engagements, you will see that most people, like in both cases, in Essequibo and Berbice, we had moved from issues of healthcare and education and roads and drainage to more community-based issues. A lot were community-based issues and NDC related, that is local government body related. So this is a major qualitative leap forward, because I recall when we just got back into office, how dominant those issues were at the public engagements we had. People used to say, we're driving on mud dams, we don't have a proper road, we don't have no service at the health center. All of those issues have receded substantially and now we're engaged with a lot of individualized problems in Essequibo Coast. After one of my presentations in Pomona, I said, when I came here in the campaign, in the early period, and in the 2015 to 2020 era, there were several issues raised with me. and I can anticipate what I will hear now. And I said there would be about reserves and who occupying the reserves and two families fighting over the reserves. So I finished my presentation, and then of the 8 issues that came up, almost 5 were exactly about that. Because we know, like a man built something on a reserve and his neighbor thinks the land is his, and that's a kind of dispute. Almost exactly what I said. And so we still need to address these things, but it's a far cry from the earlier days. And somehow some people believe that giving people an opportunity to vent these things is a sign of a dysfunctional government. I saw one of these things somewhere. I read it in one of the newspapers. It's not so. It is a sign of a government that is prepared to listen to people. Listen to people. It's because we care. Even when we can't solve the problems, we listen. Contrast that with the APNU AFC era. People could not, their own activists couldn't get access to, at the ministerial level, to have a listening, sympathetic ear, much less to have the president sit there and listen to people. So it's only an elitist view of governance that would cause you to have that opinion, or an urban-centered or urban-based view. That when people go out, the government goes out and sits for hours there listening to people, and we hear problems, it's a sign of dysfunction. If other countries around the world were doing this, the developed countries in the world, they'd have millions of issues raised, just that people don't get the opportunity to do that in those countries. And so we think it's a positive thing. And it is actually going to people. And the key thing is that we're the only ones who've been doing this consistently. So in 2021, 2020 we were there. In the middle of COVID, we were underground. 2021 we were underground. 2022 we were underground. 2023, 2024, and in 2025. Which political party has done this, or any individual in those years? You see them now talking about going underground because we are approaching elections. They don't do this in a sustained way, out of concern for people. They just show up at election time. If one thing has been consistent, we've always been on these outreaches. And when we were in opposition, I remember in the first year in opposition, I had over 80 meetings, community meetings, listening to people. In the first year in opposition. And when we walk around, we lost the elections, and I walk around Starbrook Market, and people, they had some thugs basically APNU cussing me out, and I didn't bother with them. I just walked through the area. I remember just after we lost the elections, go back to Starbrook Market and talk to people. We didn't do, and we were on the ground constantly, in opposition too. They have then done nothing absolutely in these years, but they will show up for the next couple of months because they're looking for votes now. They see people as vote banks only, not to address their concerns. So for all those who think, oh, they're very worried. So that's why you see these editorials and the stuff, oh, the government is dysfunctional. When the president goes out, why does he have to listen to this, or the vice president? Well, it's because we care. That's why. We don't mind spending our time doing it there than sitting down and sipping coffee just in, something else in Georgetown and pontificating about development. That's not how development works. So on the Essequibo Coast, I went back and I had an engagement with the PYO. You know, we've had over 15,000 members. We were targeting 5,000. And we already have over 15,000 members in the Progressive Youth organization, which is the youth arm of the party. And if you look at the demographics, you will see it's young people of every race, every race. So that is the future of the PPP. And last year I went to Essequibo and I met some young people there, and we set up, you had about 500 of them, and we set up several committees in the PYO as part of the resuscitation of the PYO, which came about after the Congress. We said before the next Congress, we'll have at least 5,000 members. And I was so pleased that the committees that we set up got a chance to report on the meeting that I had on Saturday last in Essequibo. We had over 1,000 young people there, and it was entirely positive. You didn't hear negative griping about APNU or anyone else. They were all looking to the future and excited about the future, the young people there. And so the committees were on education and training, sports and culture, agriculture, and then PR. This was the PYO structure, the party structure. And they all reported on how much work was done by the PYO itself, the youth arm of the party, in many areas, training people, like the agriculture, the shade houses in 3 areas in Anna Regina Charity Study, training young people. And these are party related, not just government, but we promote shade houses at the national level, we promote scholarships at the national level. So we were doing it at the party level too, for everyone. And about sports and culture, and there were how many young people they had brought together and expanded the PYO through the sports and culture. And the money that was being spent, we spent hundreds of millions of dollars developing sport facilities in the region, not just here in Georgetown, but in Berbice, but also Essequibo and in the Amerindian communities. Almost every one of the 242 communities got allocations to do the sports ground, every one of them, out of the NTC meetings. So it was having an impact on young people and their ability to engage in sports and all of that stuff. So it was very pleasing to me to see that these young people, over 1,000 of them, young people of every race, speaking about their engagement, what has happened over the past 6 months with the PYO, and with excitement look into the future. And this is the only party that can do this. Our party. Which other party, like APNU had an engagement, a small gathering of young people, and they brought everybody from around the country, and about 200 persons. And if you want to engage young people, you have to engage them back in their communities. And it had to be, you have to include people of every race, every religion, which is what we are doing. So I'm so pleased that that program went ahead. And then, so a lot of things came out from the discussions with the young people. For example, one young man got up and said, we're urging people to do the gold program. So when I was there about 6 months ago, I asked people, the young people, how many of you had joined up the scholarship programs that the government offers to everyone for free? And very few had. And I arranged from Minister Ashni Singh and Joe Hamilton to go back, and they registered over 400 persons, young people, for training in these areas. And a lot of them had already moved on, and some graduated. And so we had some who were graduating saying, join the programs, use their benefits. So one young man said to me, we're happy for this, but I'm going to UG And it's very costly because we get this scholarship now. So the tuition is off. The government announced free tuition at university. But I still have to, my parents have to pay for me to rent a place in Georgetown. And it's very costly for me. And I explained to him that it is precisely because of this that when we're in opposition, we heard this so often about people being excluded from university. When we went to Linden, we heard this. People couldn't come down. We went to Berbice, we went to Essequibo, we went to all the hinterland regions, all 4 of them, and people were saying, we'll never be able to have university education if we can, because we can't afford to come to Georgetown, and UG would not be adequate. Can you bring a campus out to us? And the population size in many of these regions can't support a full campus. We have a campus in Berbice, but that population is huge in that region. But the other regions can't support it. Maybe 3 could, but 3 is very close to Georgetown. So we were thinking about how do we give every child an opportunity to go to university in Guyana. And that is why we came up with the model of, and we promised in our manifesto, 20,000 online scholarships. We said if we could have people do university education right from their homes, then then this will cut out the cost. We have done already 30,000, and this year when we allocate, it will probably be another 5,000. So we've gone far beyond what we promised. But then we're encountering some additional difficulties that we intend to solve. So the first was access to the indigenous communities, because they didn't have internet. How do you do online university if you don't have internet facilities? So that is why the Prime Minister is rolling out a program where we're putting Starlink facilities in all the indigenous communities and the hinterland communities general, whether you're indigenous or not, and the riverine areas, etc., of the country, so you can have access to internet. I was in a young girl from the Pomeroon at the youth forum, the PYA youth forum, said, it's atrocious, the service from GT&T and Digicel there. And this is a disaster, and it's disgraceful. And I asked the PM, when I came back from Region 1 and 9, I couldn't even use my phone. The service is so crappy in these areas. And these are national companies, and they have spectrum for the whole country. And they should be utilizing the spectrum or lose them, because they're very valuable. The many bands on the spectrum that they have. And so we need the Public Utilities Commission has to really regulate the level of services that people pay for, but they can't get in these communities, in the hinterland, riverine, and sometimes even on the coastal communities. And this is something I'm personally going to follow up on. I'm going to be on their case for this matter. But that's in terms of the service that they provide. They should just be upgrading these services so you can routinely use your phone. And it disadvantages a lot of the riverine and hinterland people and children. But also even on the coast, we have some problems of that nature. And so we are solving this issue by putting in this Starlink for at least the goal programs and stuff. But then there's another issue. So the guy, I said to him, I gave him this explanation, and then he said to me, he said, but you know, I need to do my labs. I'm doing technical subjects. And so the goal program, I can't do the labs. That is why I need to physically be in Georgetown. And so we are, in the next term, we are going to be putting in every region these medical and technical labs so people can do the labs, even if they have an online scholarship. They don't have to travel, because of that, travel to university in Georgetown, which pushes up their costs. So in every region, they can be able to do their practicals on the technical subjects so that they don't have to physically be present here in the city, which pushes up their cost. So I explained what the reasoning behind the big push to take away the burden of education costs from the parents. So from nursery all the way to university, we want to make sure that we absorb most, if not all, of the costs so that parents don't have to worry in the future. From the time you get a baby, you don't have to worry about their education or spend huge sums of your budget on it. You can spend your salary on other issues. And the same thing with healthcare. So I was explaining this philosophy of the government, and it's systematic, and it's being done because we know the goal. Every year we can take a few initiatives, like we did, first of all, the scholarship, the children grant, returning it, removing of fees from university, now these technical hubs, all of this, consistent with that philosophy. So it was very good, like the interactions of people. And you know, we are working on our manifesto. We've been sharing numerous ideas. I came here, I shared a lot of ideas about what we're planning on financial literacy, financial inclusion, financial empowerment, and also in the other sectors, small business support, etc. So we are looking at this. Now, there are a couple of numbers. We just set up a WhatsApp number. I hope it's set up today. So the number is 741, it's a phone number, 741-2575. So if you have any idea, whatever the idea is, and you think it should be included in the future, I can promise you that once you submit in the next 5 years, you submit the idea, we'll give it serious consideration. I can't promise that everything will be in the plan. We're not APNU, we cost everything, we see that we can deliver it. We're not them, but I can tell you that your ideas will be given serious consideration. So you can either do it there or put it in an envelope and say manifesto ideas, PPP, and drop it in a box downstairs at the head office here, or in the regions. We're going to have at the parties offices around the region. You can easily take any idea you have. No idea is too silly to look at. We look at everything whilst we're crafting. We have a ton load ourselves, and we're trying to sort all of this through because we can't do everything, and sometimes the objectives are contradictory of the ideas. But I can promise you this. So please ensure that if you wish, you just can submit all of these ideas. Like it was when we decided to move in this budget to a more friendly approach to work. It was because of the ideas we got from people. A lot of working people said, you know, our overtime, we get taxed too much on the overtime, but we don't have an allowance for overtime. So in the budget, we put in an allowance for overtime that becomes tax-free. So it's $50,000, I think, per month. So if you work up to $50,000 per month overtime, you don't pay taxes on it. And that came out of discussion with people who are working overtime, trying to work a bit harder, but then they were paying higher taxes. So now if you earn up to $50,000 per month overtime, you don't have to pay any taxes on the overtime. The second thing is people said, you know, I'm doing a second job. I have one job, but I'm working for somebody else in the evening or somewhere. And that shows energy and progress and wanting to achieve. People do this routinely when they migrate from Guyana. They go to New York, they're working 3-4 jobs. They don't get a tax benefit. We said, if you work overtime, you also get $50,000 per month from the second salary, tax-free. And that is why, so ideas are important. So people keep more that they earn instead of having to pay higher taxes. So please use this opportunity now to share your ideas with the party. As I said before, we have an open mind to this. In opposition, when we were developing our manifesto, although we had a lot of ideas because we were on the ground all the time, we still had a consultation forum. It was held at the New Thriving Restaurant on the East Bank, and because we had booked a hall at the hotel Ramada, and the government to influence them to withdraw the booking at that time. Imagine at that late, and they withdrew the booking from us. So we had to find an alternate venue, and we did it. And it was well attended, and people came and they shared their ideas and stuff like that. Here we can broaden it to people across the entire country about getting your ideas in. So as we conclude our manifesto, as I said before, we're going to be putting out several position papers on various topics, and we expect those two will generate a lot of discussion before we conclude what our manifesto will be. The thing about Essequibo, and I'm still on Essequibo and that trip there, after and finish engaging with the PYO, I had several meetings with the Chamber of Commerce, etc. And I asked at the meeting how many persons are looking for a job and don't have a job. And very few people would raise their hands at the meetings. And I remember going in opposition. It was a groundswell. People had no jobs whatsoever. First of all, APNU was not helping the rice industry, which is the bulk of the income in Essequibo comes from rice. So once you don't get help there, everything else gets affected. The way of life of the people change. And because it's the biggest source of disposable income. And secondly, there were no jobs. Because Essequibo is peculiar, a lot of the jobs there are agriculture based. So a lot of the kids who need higher, they do well at the exams, but they need to move away. So while we have been extremely successful at generating more jobs because of the dynamism in the non-oil economy too, but mainly at the low end. But as you get more technically qualified, we still have a gap there, and that's what we talk about all the time. Because people who are more technically qualified, we have to create more opportunities on the Essequibo coast. But at the lower end, I met with the chamber. The chamber said, we're looking for laborers now, even with the Venezuelans in there. Well, Guyanese, Venezuelans, and some Venezuelans who have migrated. One business owner said to me, I'm prepared to build living quarters to keep the people here. I'm looking for like 5-6 persons now, and I can't find labor, which is a far cry from where we were. It's good to be in that position. It's also a constraining factor on development, labor shortages, but from the era in when we are not on the APNU, where people didn't have any job. And so when I looked at the people who said they may not have enough jobs, it's still in the Amerindian communities in Region 2, because on the coastal communities, you've had an upsurge, and they don't want to, they don't travel to work every day from the communities. But we've hired more people in the Amerindian communities. You remember APNU had terminated 1,792 CSOs. We now have across the country nearly 3,000 CSOs and maybe another 2,000 persons who are working on the part-time jobs in Amerindian villages. So whilst we've been able to generate more jobs directly from government and then with increased economic activities, we still have some issues there. So, but it was extremely pleasing for me to witness that on the Essequibo Coast, where almost every second person was without a job when we went there. And so these are the metrics that are important to people. You don't, everybody goes and say, oh, a man says something about a drain there, but they don't talk about the transformation on the coast, Essequibo Coast, about new hospitals and schools, the new school that was built here, a modern school, the health facilities generally, the roads, community roads, the farm-to-market roads, the drainage and irrigation, which are the lifeblood of the industry, the help to the farmers. They don't see all of that on the Essequibo Coast, but the farmers themselves see it, they know it. They came to the meeting and they're appreciative of it. So it's not the outliers that will matter on these areas. It's people who know that without the PPP being there, they would have been seriously neglected. And I'll come to that when I talk about the rice industry, because I saw a news article from the Stabroek about that. So it was changed. In the next, we're looking at a whole range of new things on the Essequibo Coast that we spoke of there. So in each of these areas, both Berbice and Essequibo, where we had outreaches, I think people understand. Even when they complain about some issues, they understand that without the PPP government, their communities would have remained in the doldrums or declining all the time, as we saw on the APNU. And not just in pro-PPP communities, but also in communities that are supportive of APNU. You check Dartmouth or Queenstown on the Essequibo Coast, and you will see the same development there that's happening elsewhere. And the support we're giving, even the farmers in Dartmouth, expand production, etc. It's important. So this, since I'm on it, let me speak a bit about the rice industry, because it says here some Essequibo rice farmers dumping paddy. 2 mills now taking more, Stabroek News today. And I had a very interactive meeting with hundreds of farmers. They came up, they always felt. And the key issue here is, and the article accurately reflects this. The farmer Tabo, who spoke about the situation, laid blame on the monopolistic practices of a few large millers. The paddy is in a surplus, he told the Stabroek News. It's 2 times the amount now that is being produced. I told the president we need more buyers. That's when the president was there some while ago. So, twice as much, he said. And what happened is that we are planting around the same acreages or small increase in the quantity. But because of the new practices, because of the help, the drainage and irrigation help, because of assisting the farmers with pesticide so they can spray to reduce paddy bug infestation and all of these issues, by assisting them, we have increased the yield enormously from the past. So you have a new problem caused by our success now. Higher yields, even from the same amount of acreage, which is good for the farmers now. So they are moving from like 30 bags per acre to 40 bags per acre. One farmer said to me, I cut 3 acres, I got 160 bags from 3 acres. So that's unheard of, because in the past we were struggling to get 30 bags per acre. So what this means is that we have a huge amount of paddy being produced, and the thing with paddy is that if it's ripened and you have to get it out of the field before the rain comes, so you have 1 month or so, maybe 3 weeks to a month right from now, to take it all out. Or else, if it stays in the field and the rain falls, it will drop hard to harvest. Or if you take it or cut it and you can't get it purchased, it's in the tractors and trailers. You can't get it purchased within 3 days, it starts spoiling. So the intake, like at one mill, is 12,000 bags per day. Because that was, historically, that might have been adequate with a large number of buyers. But now, if you have, say, 60,000 bags remaining, or 30,000 bags, it would take you 3 days with the 12,000 bags per day intake. That is the trucks to come up, offload, get it out, etc. It will take you 3 days, which already puts the paddy on the verge of spoiling. So that's why it's time-bound, but it's a problem caused by great success. So because we're the only party that's been looking for solutions. So we went down there, we got commitments from people to buy. I went back there, I met with all of the buyers. They increased the amount that they will buy. They said within 1 month, we had a gap of about 100, maybe to 150,000 bags of paddy. So I said, I'm going to come back to Georgetown, have a meeting again with them, and then I'll send the Minister of Agriculture to report on the meeting how we can take in the additional 150,000 bags of paddy within the 1 month period. And we had an agreement. We got buyers from the other regions to go across because the other regions have more buyers. They too had a high yield in Berbice and region in 6 and 5, massive yields, but they managed to because they have more buyers. So we help with transportation. The Public Works now dedicated a vessel so you can have more buyers going in. The buyers committed to take more. And we have helped to support the price. We're giving some fertilizer, etc. So because the minister went back after my meeting in Georgetown, and he reported all of this to the farmers, and they're appreciative of it because they know that this is a problem caused by success. But we are working with them. And they recognize no other government would have done this. Actually met with them several times to get this done. So then I was told that there are 24 farmers, so nobody is dumping paddy. That's the first thing. 24 farmers had about 6,000 bags of paddy that were spoiled because the minister, so I asked them to meet with the minister, and this was the report. Because they got it in the line, apparently, but they couldn't sell it in time. So we are working with those farmers too. Now, what are we offering as a solution? This is going to be a long-term problem, but a problem of success, increased production. And increased production is good for everyone, the whole of our country. Not just people used to think, oh, the PP is after farming because it's an Indo-Guyanese activity. Production, like oil, or when we manufacture more, or when we build more hotels for all of our people. It grows wealth in our country. So we have already been committed. If this is going to happen on a sustained basis on the Essequibo Coast, the problem is the short period that you need to take in the paddy. So we have to now build more storage facilities and drying facilities. So that is why the government has made a commitment that in the next term, we will examine about maybe 3 facilities strategically placed along the Essequibo Coast, where you can have storage and drying government facilities so that you can increase intake. Because if you have 3 facilities, you can be buying at 3 points at the same time. But we don't want this to become a government activity. We don't want, this is essentially a private sector activity. So these facilities can be rented to the people who are buying and storing, so that you have a longer period, and it will keep prices buoyant too. Because if you can buy and store for a year, you can then play the international market. You don't have to get all of your rice out in a particular period and a short period. You can then have a more nuanced marketing strategy. So we're working on this. We're thinking about solutions to increase production. I spoke of the increase, not just increased production, but increased help to farmers. Let me just give you an idea, because people are not aware of the work sometimes that is taking place behind the scenes. So you would recall, if you go back and Google it, about 2 years ago, I was in Essequibo Coast again, and I invited the people in Essequibo Coast to come to a meeting that I had with farmers from regions 3, 5, and 6. The key issue in these communities, particularly 5 and 6, had been flooding. You know, when we built the Hope Canal, we helped to save Region 4 because the Conservancy Dam was no longer threatened, because that's an earthen dam. People don't even know that. And if it breaks away, we'd be flooded from Georgetown and the whole East Coast everywhere. It would be a disaster. So we never had an outlet to the Atlantic to take the excess water. Every time the dam was threatened, we had to release water to two sluices into the Mahaika River, which, because there was no empoldment, the water went all the way across to the Abari and flooded out all the rice cultivations there. And that was the biggest rice producing area. We could lose as much as $30 million per year in the flooding. And there were several times, I went there with Sheddy Jagger and etc. How many times we've had to do that. Release the water, flood the farmers there to save Region 4, the break of the dam. And if it broke, then everybody would have been affected, 5 or 4. So we started building this canal. APNU was opposed to it. Check the records. The Guyana Human Rights Association was opposed to it. Just Google it. Hope Canal, Guyana Human Rights Association. The Guyana Association of Professional Engineers was opposed to it when we started building it as president. And then what happened? The APNU opened it, it was built. APNU opened it, we never had a flood of that nature since in Region 5. So in 1 year, possibly, we saved, as we could have paid back for the whole canal, or twice as much. And we said we were going to build similar canals in the other regions to take water from the backlands straight into the Atlantic, so that we don't have to flood out the villages along in Region 5 or Region 6 and their cultivation areas. So where were we going to fund this from? Did we use any of taxpayers' money? No. It all is coming from the LCDS money that we earn. 15% of the $750 million will go to the Amerindian communities, and 85% will go to this flood control water management program to build sluices around the country, 40 additional pumps, even for Georgetown, the one at Lilendal we're building, and to build these canals right across the country. That was the idea. We started the consultation. Since then, this is what it looks like. So in Region 5, let me give you an idea, because I talk about opening up more lands for small farmers. So in Region 5, we are now, we have an $18 billion project funded only from LCDS money, not a cent from taxpayers. We're going to build 86 kilometers of flood protection embankment. So an embankment from Mahaika to Maikoni, 45, like the Conservancy Dam we have here in Region 4, 45.9 kilometer, and Maikoni to Abari, 40 kilometers. Right, so 86 kilometers of embankment to protect the water flowing down from the backlands, and this is deep in across Region 5. The internal drains, 510 kilometers. You know what's 510 kilometers? That's like a whole length of the coast. 510 kilometers of internal drains. 283 between Mahaika and Maikoni, and between Maikoni and Abari, 226. So we are going to now open up new lands, apart from saving the other communities. We're going to, between Mahaika and Maikoni, we're going to open up 31,000 acres of land, and between Maikoni and Abari, about 24,000 acres of land. So that's 55,000 acres of land, new land, would be available now to distribute, particularly to small farmers and people who are just starting, because a lot of our smaller farmers now need land to expand cultivation. That will bring a massive output in GDP, create new growth poles, etc. I can go down all of the other elements of the project, how many pumps we're going to put, and where the canals and stuff we're doing, but I don't want to do that now. You're going to see this, but this is what it looks like. It has started, and you don't see that because it's all being done in the backlands, and it's funded not by taxpayers' money, from money we earn, that APNU would have never earned. They will never earn. Remember their Green State craziness that they had? Nothing, they couldn't work. This is being funded at the back. That will open up 55,000 acres of land in Region 5. Remember, in 4, we don't have much land, and Region 3, because they're mainly private lands now, but we have to open up lands for young farmers from Region 4 and other places too, as well as Region 5, to also move across into these areas. That's one. In Region 6, this is what we're doing now. So 42 kilometers of flood protection embankment, and internal drains, 103 kilometers, and we are going to open up now 30,000 acres of land there. So between these two regions alone, we'll have 85,000 acres of new land being opened up. But this here would prevent a lot of the flooding that the communities now are experiencing. And if you listen to some of the meetings we've had, people want new land, etc. So in these two regions alone, this project will cost there $13.8 billion. It's already started, and again, it's for LCDS money. In Essequibo Coast, we had started something that at Aurora to open up about 5,500 acres of land, and then APNU, I think, shelved it. The project document and everything was done when I was president, and now we're going to resume that, and that will cost probably about $5 billion to open up more lands for small farmers on the Essequibo Coast. So these are just about 228,000 acres in rice. So it's like more than a third of that, just adding new production and new output. We don't necessarily have to put it all in rice, because we are launching a massive new program for other crops and livestock. where you're going to see the manifesto on livestock industry, a huge program for all sorts of things. The poultry, we've expanded our poultry production. We're ready for export. The moment we start producing in a larger scale our own feed here from our own soya and all of the other material that we're growing, corn, which is being expanded now, gonna expand our exports. We want to produce all of our own eggs here, hatching eggs, because now that's a vulnerability. We have to bring in eggs from abroad for the chicks. We just said to the head of the program there, GLD, we want to do 3,000 embryos per year for these, and we're getting a 70% success rate with the embryos for the high quality animal. These are in the cattle industry. We had a discussion, the president and I, with him. The black belly sheep has grown exponentially. We said we need to buy back all of the animals and distribute them. Don't go and eat them out now. We're trying to build up a big breed. Don't start eating out right away, because we managed to get some from Barbados, but we want to grow this into 60, 70,000 animals. You know, that's when you can really start getting the prices down here locally, but start exporting for all of the livestock. And so pig rearing, you know what we've been doing. We're bringing in new varieties, all of that. So a major program for all of this. And we have details of everything. And then the agri-tech, like, so we also, the shade houses, hydroponics, even the cage fishing. You see, people ridicule it. And now some of the communities are using their cages and doing extremely well. So these are I'm just talking a bit more because these are just ideas, and I hope people would share their ideas too for the future. But we have major plans laid out in every sector. I just so happen to focus on this area now today, but it's almost every other sector and for every community, from Linden and Region 10, or for every one of the 10 regions. We have regional plans outside of sectoral plans. Regional plans like Linden becoming a hub, a lot of, now you can use this with the bridge now. You don't have to close the bridge and open it all the time. The vessels can move up and down. We can move a lot of goods to a port in Linden and transport them by barges down. We don't have to use the road. The trucks are too heavy on our road, although we're paving the Linden Sioux Lake Highway. So you come up from Brazil, you bring the stuff, or we take they need a lot of limestones, etc. Limestone, tons and tons of it, and take it up to Linden and ship it directly from Linden. So almost every region has a particular plan. And we want the conversation, like last week I said, the reason we're doing this is to hope that the conversation nationally will go into some of these areas. Because I think sometimes we get caught up in too much of the negatives. Talking about negatives, let me switch to a negative topic now. So, Vincent Alexander tells UN Forum there has been systematic marginalization of African Guyanese here. And the reason I want to address this issue, normally I will ignore Vincent Alexander because I think he is one of the old PNC type that you can never change. They have that type is exploited Afro-Guyanese for political purpose, but for not one single day has ever spoken about or implemented a specific initiative that would change people's lives at the local level, on jobs, on housing, or anything of the sort. And it's a dying breed, so I don't want to occupy my time too much with this, the breed that will go extinct in the future. But it is indicative of the entire opposition's approach to this matter of Afro-Guyanese and racism. And that is why I wanted to address it. So he said, I take this opportunity to address this forum with the true narrative, that they always have the true narrative. Everyone else has false narratives. And he said, has been systematically marginalized and remains disproportionately at the bottom of the economic and social order. This is Afro-Guyanese. He also pointed out the issues surrounding education, land rights, and political representation, stating our school curricula continues to omit the history and contributions of the Guyanese of African descent. I can go on, you get the drift. Blaming the People's Progressive Party for all of this. So it brings me back to the earlier point that I made. The PNC had absolute control over the state at every level. They controlled the judiciary because the flag of the PNC flew over the court, not the national flag, in the era of party paramountcy. They controlled the parliament, but through rigged elections, they got a majority in parliament, a super majority, more than 2/3 majority, and they controlled the executive for 28 years. And if if the school curriculum doesn't reflect the contributions of Afro-Guyanese, what did they do for 28 years to ensure that the school curriculum reflected the contributions? Nothing. When they left office after 28 years, how is it that in Guyana we were poorer than history, every race, including Afro-Guyanese? They don't believe that they have to be accountable for the period that they're in office, because they took everybody for granted. They discriminated against Indo-Guyanese and Amerindians and took Afro-Guyanese for granted, never addressed their issues too. It is, so Vincent Alexander was part of that machinery for those years. What did he do? Norton was part of the machinery. What did they do in those 28 years to change this? Nothing, absolutely nothing. In fact, they stopped building homes, etc. And people were just, everybody was poor. And so, in the 5 years that they came back, they not only discriminated against Indo-Guyanese and Amerindians and mixed people, but Afro-Guyanese too faced the brunt. Look at their own community of Linden. Vincent Alexander should be ashamed to talk about any empowerment or Afro-Guyanese. He was getting 100 million per year. They spent IPADG. They didn't spend a cent on giving the other organizations. They gave them pittances. They didn't spend a cent on empowering people. All the time they just spent the money on themselves. And I remember someone saying, I think the Rastafarian said, the reason we left IPADG, or we did not want to engage with them, because they were pursuing not an African agenda, but a PNC agenda. A PNC agenda. So IPADG is an arm of the PNC, and they took on the same characteristic of the PNC. Talk a lot about Afro-Guyanese empowerment, but do nothing about it. Because if you do nothing about it, you constantly claim that people are being discriminated against, then you create a victimhood mentality, and then you can blame the PPP for it, which they always do. That's their playbook. So this IPADG is a reflection of precisely what the PNC and the others do. He said, African Guyanese are blamed for the circumstances demeaned by public officials as lazy or unworthy. Which public official from the PPP or anywhere else has said that Afro-Guyanese are lazy or unworthy? Where have you ever heard anything of this nature? But he says this at a UN forum, a blatant lie. But you remember Amanza Walton saying Indo-Guyanese are mentally lazy. That was I can point out what they said, and the same one, I always forget his name, from the one-man party, who said in Parliament that was part of the APNU, that if Amerindians get more land, they can benefit from oil money. This is the stuff. But he goes to say that public officials are saying Afro-Guyanese are lazy. And they mean, if anybody, when we criticize the PNC, and historically, when we criticize the PNC, we are not criticizing Afro-Guyanese, we're criticizing incompetent people in the PNC. And it's now made up, and I would put Mahipal, Aegis, or Ramjatan, or Nagamutu in the same category. It's a political entity I criticize, not Afro-Guyanese. How many times we have been on the record as saying they've excluded bright young Afro-Guyanese from their leadership. It was geriatric. All the young guys and women, well, guys generally, who worked for their campaign in 2050, they excluded them. Bright young people, Afro-Guyanese. So the lies that they tell, right? But I'm glad that the gentleman, Sam Elisha Ali, pointed out what they actually do. So he said, we must establish clear measures and checks and balances to prevent African organizations, particularly those representing people of African descent, from attacking or undermining fellow groups within our communities. And in Guyana, for instance, we have witnessed organizations intended to combat institutional racism that have instead perpetrated harm by silencing dissenting voices within our community and disparaging other Afro-Guyanese who express their rights to independent thought. They're called lick bottom, slave catchers, and house slaves. We know who they are, and they're all associated with the PNC. And anyone who tries to exercise independent thought, these are the same people who run them down by calling them the vilest names. Look at the attack on people like the President Andy from across McAllister that she had to face there, or Sean Smith. Sean Smith was good when he was a PNC councillor. He chose to join the PPP. The vile attacks on him, he was a killer and all of that. in the past, anyone that has an independent or a different view and don't want to subscribe to this inept organization called the PNC or AFC, now useless organizations, they then become victims, or not victims, they become subject of the vilest sort of abuse. And not a word from Vincent Alexander condemning it. Why didn't IPADG condemn this? Because they condone it. It's part of their plans. So it's a racist ideology, and that's why they tackle people. So let me just tell you, because a number of people, as you restructure, a lot of people from the APNU side have problems with the PPP growing and expanding and being open to Afro-Guyanese. And they're hoping that the vile abuses and intimidation and trying to shame people will prevent people from joining us, because they've seen massive changes with the local government results, and a lot of people have come, and more recently, more people have come to the PPP. So they're in panic mode, and they're using this as a method to keep people away. And then you do have, on the other side, I'll tell you a story, people who are not happy with this change. So, in opposition, I was in New York, and I met a person claimed he was a strong PPP supporter, a Jaganite, he said, and that he's very unhappy that when I said in opposition that we were extremely strong in the Indo-Guyanese community historically, and we're very appreciative of the support, that we've grown stronger in the Amerindian communities in a major way and among people of mixed origin, and that we will work hard, I said this in opposition, to grow our support in Afro-Guyanese communities, because we have failed historically given the propaganda against us, the lies being told, and therefore we had not had that. And I said it in opposition. So this person who claimed he is a Jaganite said he's not happy. Indo-Guyanese will be marginalized in the PPP if you do that. And I said to him, are you aware of, you say you're a Jaganite, what Chedi Jagan fought for his whole life? And he said, yes, but that's not relevant now. And I said, it is relevant because it's part of this party's DNA, what Chedi Jagan fought for. And I'll just read a couple of things. I have a long list here, but this is in the 1961. In the middle of the race riots engineered by the CIA to divide our people, the CIA and the British Secret Service. He said this, I give my solemn pledge that my government will never discriminate against any person or persons on the ground of race, religion, or political creed. That the essential freedoms will be preserved and will respect the rights of all. Our party has always been and will always be a multiracial party. Within it, there is room for all. Its leaders come from every racial group. I call upon the Guyanese people of every race and every creed to rally behind us now. And then I can go on. 1967. I got a long list of it. If we are to go forward, the party must have the backing not of one race, but of all races. We must take the offensive. We must combat racism mercilessly and build a disciplined party. This is Cheddi Jagan in the 60s. Even when we were cheated out of government, etc., and before, we were subjected, we kept that line throughout. Why did it not happen? Because the constant issue of saying to Afro-Ghanese, the rumors, the lies told in communities about the PPP. It's an Indian party, it will discriminate against you. They used the state machinery because there was no free media to instill that in people. In that whole period, there was no free media, only the state machinery. And in the communities, people were meant to fear us. We would kill people, we'd harm them, they would never progress in the PVP. Of recent, I'm the demon in the last, Jagdeo is the demon and stuff like that, ungodly, that we didn't believe in God, a whole range of lies about us. This worked for a while, and we said we will work to break down the stereotypes again. We'll work harder every day. But that was part of our DNA. So I said to him, you're in New York. You want PPP to win elections, but you're sitting in New York. Do you think that we should only have Indo-Guyanese in our party? How are we going to win elections too? And how do we change our country? We're departing from Cheddi Jagan philosophy. And I said to him, if you're concerned only about Indian rights, and in the best way of defending Indian rights is to ensure that you don't discriminate against any other race. And that is why in 2015 to 2020, we had the credibility to fight APNU when they were sending home sugar workers or targeting Amerindians. But if we had done the same thing, if we go and target people on their race, you never have any credibility to deal with the issue. How do you protect, I said to him, how do you protect Indo-Guyanese if you discriminate against other races? And that is what started the philosophy of the party, because the way to make everybody feel secure, every group, Amerindians, mixed people, Indo-Guyanese, Afro-Guyanese, all of us, Guyanese generally, is to have everyone rights protected, everyone getting opportunities equally, and then you have a stable country and everyone rights would be protected. And that's the philosophy of the PPP. Now, strangely, so I looked in the same opposition period, and guess what? This man who was advocating only for Indian rights, guess who he ended up supporting? APNU. He ended up supporting the same one who was telling me all about Indo-Guyanese rights, etc. I saw him supporting APNU. And because, so people, sometimes you have to take on this. So from that side, and they're minority. Now in our base, you see our base. Our base understands this, that this is organic. This is what we've always spoken about. We don't have two sets of meetings. The private one in Congress, places like Freedom House, where we whisper to people, oh, you got to do this, and then a public one. Our messages are internally are the same as they are externally, and geographically the same. We're not AFC and APNU that carry different messages to different groups of racism, of people, because they practice racism. That's it. So this is important for us. Our party will grow. It's organic. People of every race will feel comfortable. We get stronger every single day. And we're not on the defensive. And our base understands this, that this is what is in the DNA. So both APNU is fearful of it, and because of the growth in the party, and a couple of people who were raising this concern, now they understand, they see the wisdom of the philosophy of the party, that you have to be a party for everyone. You have to treat everyone like family in this party, which is what we do, and their opportunities. And so this is an important thing today. Look at, by contrast, the PNC. That's why I wanted to deal with it today. The IPADG, it's not isolated message. It's not unique to IPADG. It is the sole campaigning tool for the opposition, division of people. They don't work to overcome differences. Like how I spoke with this guy and situate back what we are doing in our philosophy and the need to be broad-minded and to embrace everyone. You know what they do? Like one time we were trying to engage with the PNC. They reached out and we tried to engage with them. This is politically. And then there were some extremists in their ranks said, oh, you're engaging with the PPP, and they dropped it all. The leaders in that party do not talk to their supporters and try to build a consensus around national politics and inclusion. When they talk to their few people, their leadership, they're all about exclusion. All about exclusion. And that's why they're facing extinction. They're facing extinction. Because that's not going to work today. You have to talk to people, you have to include them all the time. I see the meeting that I had with the exporters, that it generated an article in Starbuck News, and it's basically accurate, about 80% accurate, but some of this may come from people's understanding of what we said. So let me just repeat, we were extremely pleased at such a large turnout of our exporters. I pointed out that the tariff is based on the reciprocal tariff on the trade surplus, that and that was the method used to calculate the tariff. By now, everyone knows how that's done. That we're very pleased that President Trump has announced that the U.S. is prepared to engage with countries on discussing the reciprocal tariff. We have already signaled to the U.S. government that we want to have those discussions. We are grateful for the reprieve of 90 days on the reciprocal tariff. And I see there was a confusion between the 10% and the 30%. I said the 10%, however, will be applicable to all countries and all goods going into the U.S., and it's currently in force, and therefore our exporters would have to pay the 10% tariff, or the importers would have to pay of Guyanese products will have to pay the 10% tariff. However, that this doesn't place our exporters at a competitive disadvantage, given every country will have to pay the 10% tariff going in. So if you are exporting bananas from the DR, and they would have to pay the 10%, and we export banana, we'd have to pay 10% too. So it tends to cancel out in terms of losing competitive ground. However, if we had to pay the 38% reciprocal tariff and they were paying 10%, it would put them at a competitive disadvantage. But we got a reprieve of 90 days, and we are convinced that we can discuss this with the U.S. government. We don't know the outcome of that, but given two things, that our surplus rose with the U.S. came about largely because of export of oil from American-based companies, that we're optimistic that we may be able to emerge from those discussions in better shape than we are now. Whilst we can't predict how the discussions will go. As I said before, we're engaging the Trump administration on these matters. I said, nevertheless, we're hoping we can get the reciprocal tariff removed, but should we not succeed, we'll have to meet again. In the meantime, we want to explore ideas with the exporters as to how we can assist to offset any loss of the competitiveness that they may have or encounter because of a higher tariff. And that's what we did. We explored several ideas, and we said we will get back in touch with them. But I wanted them to know that we are taking the matter seriously, and the government will be supportive of our export sector, including through using the taxation system. So that is what came out there. I saw there may be some little mix-up about how it's reported, but that is precisely what came out there. I saw the AFC too been going after GCOM. That's the only thing they do. They go after the GCOM, trying to undermine GCOM. Of course, for people who try to steal elections, to so barefacedly accuse other people of like attempting to steal, it's not just shocking. It's like out of this world. You know, it's out of this world. Who thinks that way? You know, thank you. Yes, Dennis.
Mr. Jagdeo, Dennis Shabal. Sir, first of all, can you see, in light of what has been going on over the last, I would say, few weeks, where we have seen the president of Guyana pledging differential and preferential treatment to the United States, China's response to that, and over the last 24 hours or so, we are seeing a public exchange of views on the matter of how the Venezuelan controversy should be treated or can be treated. To what extent do you foresee, say, Guyana shifting from the one China policy and supporting Taiwan? And secondly, can you say whether the Guyana government is considering the reduction in import duties on reconditioned and brand new vehicles? And thirdly, your response to
reduction of import
duties. And secondly, there have been criticisms by the Linden mayor, and I believe to some extent,
what's the one just before this?
shifting from the one China policy to Taiwan. In light of what has been happening and said over the last few weeks and 24 hours. And thirdly, there are concerns by the mayor of Linden, and I believe by the opposition APNU and PNC, that there have been insufficient consultations about priority areas for the $50 million allocation to local authorities and how that can possibly be spent in areas such as Linden, and I suspect Georgetown as well. Your reaction to that?
Okay. So let me start with the last issue. When the subvention is given to any local government body, or before it's given, they have to submit a plan to the ministry for approval. All the NDCs, the 70 NDCs and the 10 towns will have to do this. If this is a special subvention, this is not rates and taxes subvention, I don't see the government not approving a plan that will assist the people of the local government body. So if you're spending it on collecting garbage, or you're cleaning the community, or providing any better service to the people of the residents, I don't anticipate we'll oppose any such plan. It's when these guys try to siphon money off from the local government bodies into political purposes, or their admin costs. They hold conferences and jack up the food bill on the subvention. You'll be surprised to see the food bill for some of these agencies, the so-called local government bodies, especially APNUs. For the conduct of a meeting. I don't think we can spend that in like a month for a single meeting. They find ways of utilizing these resources for non-productive purposes. Then you find out that somebody who is supplying the food is related to some NDC or some person from the town. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. But this is not unique. It is something that has always happened in these PNC control areas. And every time we talk about it, people believe it's politics. But you have to go into the details. Why do you think that City Hall has a hard time getting their accounts audited when we can do this for the whole country every year? The difference is the PPP runs the central government and they run City Hall. That's the only difference. We can get it done for the country, but they can't get it done for City Hall. With a smaller revenue base and with a simple expenditure base, they can't get it done. They don't submit statements on time to get or statements to be audited. So it is a big ripoff, and next thing you'll be hearing, they're spending the money for some other purpose, political purposes. So I don't anticipate us stopping anybody from spending government subvention once it's in the service of people. We want that done. We want the residents in Linden, people of Linden, to benefit from the subvention, not the mayor and the cronies around him. We don't want that to happen. And this is what happens routinely. Why do you think we're so opposed to this, calling people into their offices to negotiate a waiver of your rates and taxes? Why do you think? Because we know from the experience of what happened here before that people have to pay their money to collect, to do this. And it happens, and the PNC doesn't see anything wrong with it. They support it all the time. So I think President Ali's statement about preferential treatment at the press conference with Secretary of State Marco Rubio has to be taken in the context of what he said. He was saying basically people who stand by your side should be treated specially. I don't think our trade regime would evolve contrary to the CET or the Common External Tariff or the Treaty of Chaguaramas or our commitment to WTO to treat goods coming from one country preferentially versus another. I don't think we are going to say our taxation system would evolve so that an American company would pay lower taxes than a Guyanese company or a Chinese company or a Canadian company or a European company. I was not speaking about the evolution of the taxation system. But really, we have in this country to be extremely grateful to the United States for two things, and I think he was expressing that gratitude publicly. One, when our democracy was under threat, they stood by our side as a country. They stood by Guyana's side, not the PPP, Guyana, because without democracy, where would we have been today? We'd probably been sanctioned. The APNU would have been making a mess now of everything. We wouldn't have had a resurgence in economic growth and all of that. Would have been heading straight down the pathway of Venezuela. And so it was that gratitude he was expressing at the press conference. And secondly, when Marco Rubio said that it would be a bad day for Venezuela if they were to attack Guyana or Exxon's outfit. It would be a bad day. We need to, that's the biggest threat to our country. Not even APNU and AFC can match that. You know the threats they have to our democracy. That's the biggest threat to our country, all of our people. That is, and that threat plays out often in specific areas. This whole question about elections in Essequibo. We've seen aggressive action on the part of Venezuela frequently when they sent that vessel in our waters. So it's not a passive threat, it's an active threat. Contrary to the provisional orders made by the ICJ and to the Argyle Agreement. They ignore both and they are making active threats against Guyana. And it is the United States that took a strong position on this matter. So that is what President Ali was saying. Now, I saw China urging negotiations between Guyana and Venezuela. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has given a comprehensive response. They issued a press release. I can't add much more to what they've said. They made it clear that we are committed to a process. We have said to the world, to everyone, that we are part of the ICJ process. We're not going back to bilateral negotiations and discussions on this matter. We have pursued that route. The Secretary General of the United Nations referred the matter to the ICJ. We accepted that. We're presenting our case at the ICJ. We believe that the matter would be resolved definitively at the ICJ. And for the charge to now say we have to go back to bilateral discussion is improper and out of place. And that is what this statement mentioned. Because it's not respectful of our national position. So, the statement is out. You can read it, what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs put out. The One China policy is the policy of the government of Guyana. It's a policy of most of the world, including that of the United States of America. And I don't see that changing now. Yes.
Hi. Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. From Belgrade with Kaiser News. I just have three questions. The first one, there has been a group of citizens protesting in front of Commissioner Ramson's office for lack of information, saying that he should go because they are not getting access to information. Do you agree with them, or do you see it as something else? Secondly, the EIA for the 7 projects says that when it comes on stream, cost of living will increase. Do you agree with the findings? And it's also suggested that the government will be buffering these costs of rising cost of living with cash grants and so forth. And thirdly, is sections of your government or is the government forcing any 10-day part-time worker to assist political meetings, threatening to take away their jobs? Those are the three I have.
And Mr. Jagdeo, the reduction of the duties, you didn't answer that one.
No, I was wondering why that question, because we passed a budget recently. We reduced duties on lots of things since we got into office, including vehicles. Their duties are still high. We will probably put them on the review in the next term in office, so they will come down. But as the road network expands too, I think we can allow a more liberal taxation system on the vehicle. But this is not discriminatory. It's applied to vehicles from any part of the world. If you were thinking about whether it's linked, maybe I don't know if that's the thinking about it's linked to the US, but it's from Japan, it's from the US, it's from Europe, the same tax rates that you pay. Yes, sorry, go on.
Yeah, those are three.
Part-time workers? Okay.
Yeah, is the government or sections of your government forcing them to attend political meetings, threatening to take away their employment?
Well, the thing is that you have 15,000 part-time workers in the country. We have had great support from the part-time workers in many state agencies. They've helped out enormously in schools, in hospitals, different agencies at the NDC level. You've had people there who try to collect money and don't show up to work too. And so it's hard to monitor everyone because they're monitored by the NDCs and local government bodies across the country. So I don't know of anybody who has been forced to come to any meeting. Or alternately, who will be fired because of a political purpose. But a lot of people in this country, when they don't perform and they get measures, they claim political discrimination. So I hope and they get terminated. If you're not working and delivering on the job, then you should lose it. If you're not showing up and just collecting the money. That was the purpose. And it was to build a work ethic, and it helped a lot of women, a lot of single parents, and that's why we want to be engaging. Like one mother came to see me from Crabwood Creek, and they were terminating her because she's pregnant. And it's maybe a difficult pregnancy, so she can't go to often. And I said to the people, I said, send a message to the region, they shouldn't do that. It's not like she's deliberately doing this, but her circumstances dictate that, she spends more time lying down rather than walking around the place. So sometimes you have people callously removing people. No, they just take you either show up. So they have to have a heart more and listen to people. That's what we ask them to do a lot in these areas. Now, no environmental impact assessment for a Exxon project can comment on inflation at the national level, because inflation is not determined by a particular project. So inflation comes about out of several things. There are different theories for inflation. It could be cost push inflation, or you could have a demand pull inflation. You could have the monetary approach to inflation is when you have too much money in the system, basically a liberal monetary policy. It could be dictated a lot, like the Keynes approach is you're spending too big a budget deficit, you're spending more. So different, but they're a combination of all of these things. So ExxonMobil can't do a study and speak about national inflation. I suspect, which Kaicho News got wrong, they were talking about the next project. Their costs may increase, their costs, because they'd have to pay increased rental costs, etc., from people because Guyanese are charging more rents for their properties and stuff. But that is not entirely true because of so many people building. I think the rental costs, which were between 3,000 US to about 7,000 US per property, that only Guyanese can supply now, that has stabilized significantly because of increased supply of apartments and buildings into the market. So they are talking about their project costs.
I think I probably misquoted
Yes,
that.
so
The section says that it could contribute to rising. I have the section here.
You just said Exxon did that. How could Exxon be commenting?
It has a section that states with rising wages and increased purchasing power driven not only by the project but by broader economic growth and development trends, the project could also contribute to the increased cost of living.
For them, Exxon, not for, they can't comment on that. So how would their project know about this? So they are talking about their costs. Every project has the cost. So they're saying, and that might be a justification to pay their workers more too. We got to watch that, you know? So we have to look at these issues. But I think you all had it wrong. I suspected from the time I saw Kaichor, I saw you elevated it to the cost of living in Guyana. It's not that their project price is going up, which they like to increase. These companies love to increase costs because it comes on cost soil. So the group of citizens protesting out there, whether I agree with it or not, outside of the Commissioner of Insurance's office. So in Guyana, people have the freedom to protest. So whether I agree with it or not, it's not germane here. They have the right to protest. Now, they may have a cause. Individuals may have a cause. But when I look at some of the people who are protesting there, it's the same group of negative people against the government. It's the Red Thread, which was the women's arm of the WPA, the defunct WPA. It's the same group of people. So they have a right to protest, and I'll defend that.
Just to get more clarity on the question, they're protesting for him to go. If indeed their cause might be true that they're not getting access to information and he's not fulfilling his duties as an officer contracted by the government, do you think that he should go, or do you think that they're just trying to cause?
I think the office of the president would have to examine this. But knowing that group, that's the same group that transitioned from the gas to energy project, that tomorrow will go and protest some women's right issue, but only if it involves a PPP official, would turn a blind eye to all the transgressions happening against women once it doesn't involve some PPP official wherever in the country somewhere. They're intensely political. And I think they just want to create this air that the government is not being open. You yourself once asked me for all of the large contracts, mining contracts. You kept asking for it, and I said, I think it's in the public domain, because we have nothing to hide. And then it was not in. I was wrong. It was not. And then I said to Ashni Singh, release it. And we put all of the large mining contracts up, and then what happened? Nothing. They're all in the public domain. And when they were released, then people saw what their fear was, the worst fear, that we were giving preferential treatment to one company versus the others. All of them had standard clauses, the standard clauses. So people saw that is fair. But there was never a story to say, we've reviewed now, And we find that all of the clauses are the same for every company, like what I was just dealing with the issue of preferential treatment. So that's it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jagdeo. Milton Granum for Starbuck News. The U.S. Embassy has stated that a visiting delegation will be here. Can you say if that delegation is here already? And if they are, can you say some of the things that the government have discussed? Or even if they're not, can you say some of the things?
Which delegation is this? We have so many delegations.
A delegation led by Congressman Rick Crawford.
Okay, that's the intelligence? Yes. Yes, they were here, and I think they've left.
Can you say some of the things that they are,
No,
some of
I
the
was
things
not
that came
part
up?
of the meeting,
You
so
weren't.
No, I was not part of the meeting. I was out.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Shania Williams from Kaiser News. Given that the U.S. has revoked the license for the Trinidad and Tobago Venezuela gas deal, will Guyanese engage Trinidad to market its gas resources? We have seen that Italian shipbuilder Saipem has secured a contract for early works for the 7th oil project, Hammerhead. Can you say if the government has begun to look at additional fiscal benefits for Guyanese from the 7 project? Could you also explain why the final audit report on Exxon's US $7.3 billion expenses hasn't been made public yet, given that the GRA granted clearance back in November last year?
Which one of the reports? So the first one is the Saipem, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're Hammerhead, right? And what was the first question? I missed it.
Oh, given that the U.S. has revoked the license.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Dragon, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And with the gas energy pipeline now complete, will government make public the heads of agreement signed between Exxon and government?
So the first issue was the revocation of that license by the U.S. government. You would recall that Trinidad saying that if they did not develop that gas field, they'd have about 4 years of gas remaining. And then that can spell major problems for Trinidad and Tobago, because the bulk of their revenue comes from gas. In Guyana's case, we had initial discussions with Trinidad and Tobago, but it wasn't so much about exploration for gas here. That it was about exploration in the Dragon field and proving of reserves. In what was discussed and what was explored was whether our gas could go to Trinidad and Tobago. We will have a pipeline going to Trinidad and Tobago, either through the development of the new project that we are working on now to monetize the gas, or alternately, well, mainly that project, because that's going to be a large project with huge volumes of gas. The one coming into Wales is only probably 120 to 130 cubic feet per day. So clearly, the gas, we have gone with a different approach here so far. We have, through a public process, identify a company to work with Exxon and the government of Guyana to monetize the gas. If they choose to take this gas to Trinidad to be processed, and that offers the greatest return to the project and thereby the greatest revenue to Guyana, that's an option to them. But there are several options available that I spoke of but have not been settled on. They want to bring the gas onshore for industrialization or to supply Brazil. For producing electricity, no. So that's one option, bringing the gas onshore, generating power, supplying Brazil with electricity, selling power. Two, bringing the gas onshore for industrial purposes, fertilizer, petrochemical industry. And then the third option is to do LNG. So not bringing it onshore, but having these offshore platforms for developing LNG and shipping that directly out. You could add another option, which is they should study whether taking it to Trinidad to be processed there makes sense. But if this is all privately determined, then they look at the rate, the return on each of these options, and then settle if we have X amount of gas. Can we meet all of them, or which is the one that in the ranking gives us the highest return? And that's how a commercial decision is made. When we're not making a political decision on this. First of all, it has to be a commercial decision, but a commercial decision must seek to maximize returns to the investor and to Guyana. So that's the approach we're going to take. In any case, Trinidad, since the revocation, I don't think they've formally reached out to us here on this matter, but that is the approach we will take in relation to any approach to Guyana to have our gas go there. Remember, we are not going to be investing taxpayers' money in the project. We just want to get a revenue from the project. They'd have to find private financing to develop this. We're not taking the people's money and putting it in these projects. We just want them developed so we can get a revenue stream to benefit our people. So, and of course, the allied development. Their assessment for Hammerhead has started. So you have to have an assessment, and they're looking at all of these things. So the FDPs, etc. If they move, the assessment is favorable, and they move to approve the project, you will hear of that shortly. But I can confirm that the assessment has started. I don't know if the GRA, this is the second audit, right? Why it's not being released? Because we don't have a problem. It's in the public domain already. I think some people have it. There is nothing strange about the GRA has cleared it, so I don't know why it's not being released. So I'll check why they have not done the same. And the same thing about the heads of agreement. The heads of agreement would all be available once the project is completed. Look at the distortion every day that APNU and the others have taken public documents and distorted them. We don't want to get into that again. They don't even read some of the documents we sent. So that will be done at some point in time. The Parliament would be given a full package. And I think they have supplied some to the Parliament already, some of this info. The PM has.
Good afternoon, Tricia Silvers, Guyana Times. In your last press conference, which was last week, Thursday, you would have stated that some of the speed limits are unusually low. Can you say exactly if efforts have been made to conduct the review? And more specifically, the second part of that question, which agency or department is responsible for setting the speed limits?
Well, obviously, when I spoke with it last week, I spoke of a balanced approach. So it is not just a technical exercise. It is So the technical work has to be done too, because you have to look at the size of the highway, the condition of the highway, all of these things, before you recommend a figure. So clearly, it has to be the traffic department. I know the president himself, who has been very concerned about this issue and been working with the team on the electronic ticketing, that is being addressed at his level. So I suspect all the agencies will be working together to come up with this figure. But it will have to take the speed limit, but it would have to take into consideration two things. You don't want it to be, as I said last week, at a level that is so low that people will be ticketed, for driving at a ridiculously slow level, like some of the limits are on the highway. But at the same time, you have the counterpart. We have had people who lost their lives because of speeding. So it's the balance that you strike there. And I'm sure that whenever it's increased, you're going to have two groups of people saying it shouldn't have been there, and another one. It's going to inevitably engender that discussion, but the agencies, that's why it's important that they also look at road safety along with the need to implement a higher speed limit. And so it's being done with a group, and the president himself been overseeing some of these engagements. Because up to a few days ago, we talked about it.
Good afternoon, Trina Williams, Ghana Chronicle. Earlier you spoke about the PNC's attempt last week to shift the blame onto the government while failing to acknowledge their poor stewardship. In New Amsterdam, which is PNC-led, the town is experiencing severe flooding, and today parts of Georgetown is flooded too. In light of these developments, do you believe the opposition's management of these key towns demonstrates an inability to effectively govern the country?
Yes, they don't, because they don't focus on governance. Everything else is a hustle. In New Amsterdam, they sold out a lot of the lands there through corrupt deals that would belong to the city, the town council. If you talk to some of our councillors, they will tell you about this. They were in Georgetown, they did the same thing too. So in Northeast, a group came to see me at Freedom House a couple of weeks ago. Lots of young people from Northeast here in Georgetown, and some older people. So they asked if they could there's a strip of land there that they could get a tarmac on and some lights for the people to play in the community and young people to have access to. I said, Minister Indar, please visit the community. So I asked, how did we miss this? Because we're doing the 34 grounds in the city, all of them with lights, etc., like we're doing elsewhere in the country. So I wondered how we missed this, but this is just a narrow stretch. So they showed me the map, we look at it and stuff. Minister Indar visited, and then they discovered a man had a lease he got there in 2015. And I'm told that his relative was a PNC councillor. So now the community wants this, but he went and put a piece of equipment from the time, he wasn't using it, from the time Minister Indar went. So all those kids in South Georgetown now will now have access to this if we allow him to continue to do this. This is typical PNC behavior. They gave it out, now he didn't do anything. We're trying to develop the area for the young people, put a tarmac in now so they could play. He's blocking the access. And they will not come out and condemn that, but they'll come and claim that we're not doing anything in some areas. Of course, that's a fake. big thing. They came, the whole crew came to Freedom House, 20-something people, youngsters. So they don't manage. It's all a hustle. How come the agricultural office of the PNC, that's a property for the town council owns that, the PNC agricultural office. You find out, look at the lease that they got. Nothing they're practically paying. They just don't care about the resident. So the areas, we're gonna be more concerned about some of these drains and stuff. You see Edge Hill walking around before the end of the day, walking around trying to do it. The mayor would never go and do that. He's busy trying to get these deals done. He wouldn't walk around the place to try to alleviate, when we get excessive rainfall, we may have some accumulation. So this is typical PNC behavior.
You also mentioned that parties have to campaign on their track record and plans for the country. The government has introduced a number of policies which are aimed at improving the lives of Guyanese. However, some of these initiatives are seemingly overshadowed by attempts to discredit the party. As General Secretary of the PPP, what strategies will the party put in place to ensure that such impactful initiatives are not lost amidst political distractions and opposition narratives?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's a constant battle, because they have this negative industry. So people link to them, like the Sherrod Duncans and the others, all the time distort stuff. You could, for example, the 30,000 persons who got the gold scholarship will never be interviewed. They would find one person of the 30,000 who has some problems and then highlight that and make that the prevailing condition. So can you imagine them criticizing us for our housing policy now? They would go and say, oh, the PP not doing enough for housing, shamelessly. And we have built 40-something thousand, given out 40-something thousand plots of land. The fact of the matter is that we can do much more. We spent $300 billion on it. You don't have the capacity to do more, but you do still have many people waiting. So they go to those people and say, how long you been waiting? And then don't speak about what they did in the 5 years to cause the list in Region 4 to just accumulate to such a level that we're only distributing now house lots if you had applied before 2019. Because they just changed the whole policy but didn't provide any house lots. So then they just were collecting applications from people and giving them land that we had already developed, or doing a couple, I think 1,000 somewhere. That's the entire industry. But it's up to people who listen. A lot of the PPP supporters who are listening to these programs, because many of them come there, it's their job to go to the social media. I said to the PYO, and speak about the positive things. We are positive. I say to them, don't engage in nasty fight with them, racist, right? You can't win them on that. They're the vilest. You can't win on those things. So avoid those nasty fights. Focus a lot on what we are doing. So one person can go down and do sometimes a little crazy thing and get more positive feedback than the whole system, because we don't do enough. And the government agencies too have to go out there, particularly those that deal with government PR, including the ministers and their offices, to get people to talk about what's happening. Sometimes the ministers go out and they make too long speeches, and their focus of the camera is all the time on the speeches and not on the thousands that are helped. So they need to tell this story, because there are thousands of people who have been helped by this government. If not a contract, look at the contracts the last weekend. They started to give out contracts for this year, and we have about 800 in Berbice. We have over 1,000, 1,100 in Region 4. Small contractors, almost all of them, 95% under the PPP. And we're trying to do one per person to assist small people. But if you do 300 contracts only in Berbice, like they did this weekend, then you have another 500 people who think they're not getting. But Ashni Singh, I asked him to go there tomorrow to say to the other small people that there are lots of other things that are going to come their way, so they would get too. So we have built up, because of our empowerment of people, it becomes more burdensome too, because everybody see the first man who gets and say, what about me? And they will get help too, because there are lots of other things like the drainage works to come, and then there are additional contracts and stuff like that. And this is at the bottom. Not the bidding, the ones that we're bidding for, but small people, because we want to help. But sometimes our activism and empowerment of people has created a new set of problems, because you have to satisfy people too. When you're a dodo party and don't give anyone anything, everybody, says, oh, nothing is happening, we're not getting, but the neighbor not getting now too. So that is, but we need to get those people to tell this story. People got scholarships, they got a house lot, they might get a contract, they get their NIS issue fixed. They may not get all of the things at once, but they're getting help. They got their road in front of their yard fixed, things that they were waiting for years. They may not get the NIS and the road and the house lot and the job all at once, but they're getting help in one form or another. And this is largely because of our approach. So even the government agencies have to start letting people tell this story, not just trying to retell this story all the time. And we need to get people at the bottom to tell that.
You just spoke about housing, and the president over the weekend and even prior to that spoke about clearing the housing backlog in Berbice and Region 3. This has received a lot of criticism and doubt by the opposition, like many other government initiatives and promises like the 60,000 jobs. What do you have to say to that?
Well, that's all they have. They express doubt. Amai Paul, I don't know who they are also, some Campbell, no, Benjamin. Benjamin, he is the general secretary of the party. I don't know who he is. And they go to these meetings, they're clueless. So I explain right here that the money is in the budget, that if you live in any of the 9 regions, except 4, because in 4 we had this massive backlog that they had, maybe 50, 60,000. Everyone from the regions want to come to 4-2. So they all, if they're in Essequibo, they are applying for a plot here in Georgetown. So we decided to accelerate those. So you have modest numbers in the region. Like in Region 3, we had to first of all take back the lands that they gave out to friends and family at Wales to get land to develop these house lots. We took them back, we're developing house lots. So we have about 14,000 to clear in that region. If you go to the other regions, it's like 300, sometimes 300 applications we have. Like in the Mahdia area, we have 300 or 400. So it's easier to clear off all the regions. So we said we will focus on clearing off these regions who have applied up to the end 2024 by this year's end and early next year. And in Region 4, we hope it will take some of the pressure off. If you get a plot over there, we can take you off from Region 4. We're trying to get more people now with a new bridge to go to 3. Because in 4, we're running out of lands. And so then we can continue working in Region 4. And we have done most of the plots so far in Region 4. So we can, what the president said is, our plan for all the other regions. Look at region 10. APNU 0 is 1,600, 1,600 plots we give out and already in that region. And we're going to clear off all the backlog in these areas. But what else do they have to say except negative? Have they laid out any plan for housing that you've seen? Anything work? Norton once said rental support. That's their plan for housing. Nothing, not a single thing. But we said already in the next term, we have to ensure that people get the plot and more people, so we be able to probably clear off most of the backlog. And then we have to start helping people to build, which we started this term, but we will accelerate it the next term. So then we can every Guyanese who needs a plot of land can get a plot of land. That's our objective. We made it clear. All right. Thank you very much.